So I wanted to make a video today surrounding a Alan Nixon report that came out this morning about when Chansiri did a fan forum this week. He mentioned there was something he couldn't talk about relating to our manager Danny Rull. This is kind of tumbling. Now you're seeing people try and support Chansiri and it's all getting a little bit toxic, especially after a loss to Leeds 3-0. Again, I'm not going to talk about that fixture so much because I actually think we played quite well, but we're two clubs in very different positions. A derby isn't what it used to be when you've got all this going off at the minute. Now, the report from Alan Nixon said that Danny Rull wanted the £5 million release clause in his contract lowered because he was unsuccessful in a move to Southampton because they wouldn't pay it. Now, in my previous video speaking about the fan forum, I said Danny would be in for some rightful stick if he wanted to jump this early to Southampton. So this is the video where I'm going to play devil's advocate. I'm going to talk about both sides, but you will see why a lot of the things I still said about the fan forum, I still fully back. Pretty much everything I said, even if I am going to put a little bit more pressure on the manager currently. So Danny Rull signed a contract in the summer, extending his stay here to 2027. He has asked the owner to lower his release clause in his contract. This is after the Southampton move went through because Southampton didn't pay it. Now, this is all alleged because this is just a report. Okay, this is a report from Alan Nixon. And what he said, some of it checks out quite. Like he's quite credible on some things don't come to pass. Either way, I could see this very much being the case. Now, knowing our owner, this will have got his back up. And that's where the fallout comes from. And he doesn't speak to him from December when all of this came from. I alluded to this in the podcast we did a couple of days ago. I think Danny Rull is within his rights after the fact to ask for the contract to be changed and have his release clause lowered. I think Chansiri is fully within his rights to say no. I think both of those things are valid. I think Chansiri, if I was the owner, I'd turn around and go, no, you've just signed this contract. It's not currently happening. But I would say, given the way you have got this team performing and the fact that I value you as a manager, we can reassess this in the summer about potentially lowering your release clause. But now we must focus on the January window. That would be a suggestion I would have in that situation. Because what we're seeing is two very different worlds. We're seeing an owner throw his toys out of the pram at a fan forum. Because let's be honest, it's quite clear here, this asking from Danny Rull has dented his pride. But what we're seeing is Danny Rull has taken it and he's being professional. He's doing his job. He's actually presented a list of transfer targets. Even though Chansiri said he hasn't seen them, he presented them to the recruitment team like he was supposed to. Chansiri just obviously hasn't reached out and talked to his manager because his pride has been dented by this. And I understand there's a lot of trauma left over from the Steve Bruce thing, right? Steve Bruce messed over this club many years ago now by leaving Wednesday. So there is grounds of PTSD-like symptoms here. I don't like it, right? I don't like a manager wanting to leave so early in this project, but the fact is, he's realised that the clubs aren't going to spend that release clause, which, to be honest, I will say, Southampton, if you wanted him, you could have spent the $5 million. I actually do back our ownership on this. I would have said no too. But what I would have said, which hasn't happened, I wouldn't throw my toys out the pram. I'd have sat down and gone, look, we'll revisit it. Potentially we'll lower it by $1 million, maybe $2 million. Not in the summer, but sort of in a year's time. Give me some time to build an infrastructure in this club, because what this club doesn't currently have is infrastructure. I'd say to the manager, I'm really impressed with the work you've done so far. You are a valuable asset to this club. You have got a contract. I expect you to honour the contract. However, I will look at amending it in a year's time after we've built a little bit more with this club. And we can talk about maybe what that amendment would be in the summer. Let's be reasonable about this, because what I can do in that year's time is, if you do have an offer coming in next January, for example, for a club, by that time, I've appointed a director of football that understands the philosophy and the style that you have brought to this club. I have appointed a CEO that can help run things and manage things when I'm not here a little bit better to this club. And what I've done is I've built an infrastructure around this club that can survive beyond a manager. which means we don't change a style of football every single manager. Darren Moore played a different style to Xisco Muniz, and then Danny Rulle's come in and played a different style. Short-term manager changes bring different styles, and it's not healthy for the players. It's not healthy for the system. If you build that infrastructure, you can bring players in from academy level that are playing this press style that Danny's got, that's really working for us and the fans like and the fans have bought into. You capitalise on that. You go, right, I'm going to build an infrastructure of my club around this now, and that's going to be what we have. There's going to be a director of football in place that basically, if Danny Rull decides to go in a year and his release clause is triggered, then we've got another manager on the horizon that the director of football has already kept an eye on that we can sort of bring into this position. He's got a similar style to Danny Rull. The players will adapt to it a lot better and we can build off that. And that is why I am still uncomfortable with laying all the blame at Danny Rull's feet. And I think everything I still said about Chansiri is valid. He needs to be professional, right? I would probably be a little bit annoyed if I just give a guy a contract and he's not been able to make a move. So he's asked me to change something in that contract 6 months down the line. However, that's just football. I wouldn't let it dent my pride to a point where I'm then not ringing him when we've got a really, really vital window and I'm making him come to me and being like, oh no, you come to me, you've annoyed me, sort of thing. You know, in my head, I wouldn't do that. I'd be like, look, we need to talk about this because this has come at a very awkward time and we've got a busy window. The Southampton move hasn't happened. I'd even say, let's shelve all talks about your contract for now and let's focus on this window. That's what should have happened, but it hasn't happened. And for me, that is fundamental in running a football club. You've got to get the professional matters of the football club out first. And he says he doesn't want to damage the club. If this is all true, and this is exactly how it's played out, then Chansiri's still on the hook for the professionalism aspect. Because Danny Rull is doing it. He's doing all the things he needs to do. He's doing his job and he's got a contract. And Chansiri can say, no, do you know what? Chansiri could even turn around and say, no, you're honouring that contract. And then if Danny Rull starts to check out, then you go, right, you're not doing your job. And the fans would turn on Danny Rull if that was the case. But he's not. He's done his job. The owner's not done his job. You could actually force Danny Rull to see out his contract here. You could do that. He doesn't have to talk about amending contracts. I'm only saying what I'd do as an owner if I was trying to build the club and build infrastructure and keep everybody happy while protecting the club. But he could just make him see it out. And if Danny Rull stays professional and does his job throughout that whole contract, then you still can't slate Danny Rull because he's seeing out his contract. If Danny Rull starts throwing his toys out the pram, which I don't see any evidence that he has, then yes, you can give him stick. Now, the reason I'm making a video is because I'm seeing people starting to see it on the internet where people are going, oh, he's a mercenary, he's this, he's that, and there's no loyalty in football. No, there's not as much loyalty in football. And yes, I'm disappointed that there was a potential that if that release clause had been triggered, that it's most likely that Danny Rull would have gone to Southampton. But that's why the release clause was in the contract. It protected us. Danny Rull agreed to it, and he's still our manager for at least these 6 months. Or if Chansiri says throughout his contract, you know, that's why they're in place. He agreed to the contract. But from what I am gathering from this Nixon report, he's asked for it to be amended because he was disappointed he wouldn't be able to get to talk about the move to Southampton, which I understand, you know, as a manager that's got ambitions. I'm disappointed as a Wednesday fan that he'd want to talk to that in that current situation, but he is here. It's happened, and we need to be professional about it and move past it. Because I think Danny Rull was trying to do everything on the quiet, you know, and it would have moved if the club had been happy with the 5 million, we probably wouldn't have been too happy, but the release clause would have been triggered. Then we talk about it. But this didn't have to come out at all, really. Danny Rull came out and said he decided to stay at Wednesday. You know, we'd have just gone with that and we could have built off that. But then we've got this fans forum that still derailed everything. So even if you are going to lay some of the blame at the manager's door, which is I felt was slightly right by making this video, he's been the professional here. Chansiri, I hope after this Leeds game has a chat with him and we bring things back on board and maybe an adult conversation like I'm suggesting in this video happens. But I do think we need to start building infrastructure in this club. If you're not going to appoint a CEO, at least appoint a director of football that looks at this style that Danny Rull is playing. We develop a pressing identity because I love watching this football and we're doing well under it, you know, and when Danny Rull eventually leaves, we can bring somebody else in that follows that identity, might tweak it slightly. Look at Arne Slot at Liverpool. plays a similar style to Jurgen Klopp, but a little bit different. So a little bit of a tweak, and they're doing really, really well. I know that's on the highest level, but it's a broad example for people watching this. If we can do that and just keep managers in, they've got a similar philosophy, they might tweak things slightly, the players will adapt quicker. The players coming through our academy will know what to expect. They'll have been trained to be certain types of footballers. Our loans will be effective because we will loan our players out to clubs that follow that identity. And generally, as a club, we will have an identity and we'll be able to build through it. But yes, let me know what you think on this latest development. Do you believe the report? Are you angry at Danny? Do you still think what I've said about Chansiri is valid? Let me know all of that in the comments. But for now, guys, thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, do all those things, and keep watching right here on Dexterity Box.